In Nigeria's River State, we're seeing a massive political collapse. I mean, this isn't just some local feud. It's escalated into a full-blown constitutional crisis. You've got a governor, a powerful federal minister who used to be governor, and a legislative supermajority all locked into confrontation. So today, our mission is pretty simple. We're going to cut through all that complexity and really look at the anatomy of this power struggle. Our sources detail a crisis that's completely rooted in what they call Godfather politics, and it just culminated in these dramatic impeachment proceedings that were initiated on January 8, 2026, against Governor Siminalayi Fubara and his deputy. The central tension here, and this is what makes it relevant far beyond River State, is the blatant weaponization of constitutional mechanisms for political revenge. We were basically watching a live stress test of Nigeria's democratic institutions. Can they actually withstand this kind of corrosive influence from these incredibly powerful political patrons?
It's a remarkable display of institutional fragility. It really is. This crisis has plunged the oil-rich state into turmoil really since October 2023, and it illustrates a fundamental problem. That is, that patronage networks and these powerful personalities, they so often just override the established legal procedures when it comes to succession and governance. What's so fascinating here is how the threat of the former governor, who's now a minister, seems to be a more effective tool for control than the actual constitutional mandate of the sitting governor.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning then. Let's unpack the players. Fubara was elected in 2023, and he was the anointed successor of Nyesom Wike, who is the classic Nigerian political patron. This was supposed to be a completely seamless transfer of power, but Wike's approval, it just fractured almost immediately when Fubara tried to assert even a little bit of independence. What form did that take?
Well, it was really an attempt to change the financial relationship and the power dynamic, with the local government structures and with the legislature. The material we have points to Fubara presenting the state budget to a factional assembly. So he was effectively trying to bypass the pro-Wike supermajority.
That sounds like a direct declaration of war.
It was. He was trying to govern based on his electoral mandate, not on the Godfather's directives.
And the most strategic move he made, though, you could argue maybe it was too late, was his defection to the All Progressives Congress, the APC, on December 9, 2025. It really looked like a desperate plea for help, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It was interpreted by everyone as him seeking federal sanctuary. He was trying to align himself with the ruling federal party, hoping President Tinubu would step in and shield him from his predecessor. But the key player here is still Wike, the Godfather, now the minister of the FCT. His whole transition from patron to antagonist, it stems from one specific accusation, that Fubara unilaterally reneged on a peace agreement that President Tinubu himself had brokered back in June 2025.
The fact that a sitting FCT minister, which is a federal position, commands the loyalty of 26 out of 32 state lawmakers is just astonishing. How does he even maintain that kind of power remotely?
Well, Wike is demonstrating that a federal portfolio is often a more powerful tool for state control than the governorship itself. It lets him pull the strings from a distance, leveraging influence within the national political structure, controlling the flow of resources, appointments. His power base in Rivers is just so deeply entrenched through these networks, and his threat that there would be no second chance for Fubara, that wasn't just rhetoric. It was a political decree, and it was backed by serious institutional muscle.
So if the Godfather demands loyalty, he needs a mechanism, an institutional one, to enforce it. And that's where the legislature comes in as the ultimate weapon.
Precisely. Speaker Martin Zamihole, he leads that 26-member pro-Wike assembly faction. And they haven't just, occasionally disagreed with the governor. They have consistently used their constitutional powers, specifically impeachment, to align with Wike's objectives. So this forces you, the listener, to ask a critical question. Is this legislature operating as an autonomous branch of government? Or is it just an instrument of the Godfather's will?
And then you have Deputy Governor Ngozi Odu, who is co-accused. Her situation just underscores the total breakdown of order. She's accused of seeking budgetary approval from another group instead of the legitimate assembly. I mean, you have two rival factions, and each one is claiming to be the real legislature. The very source of state authority is just completely confused.
It is. And when institutional lines get blurred that much, governance just grinds to a halt. It stops being about passing laws. It's about whose faction gets to sign the appropriation bill. The allegations against Odu really highlight that this power struggle has moved way past personality conflicts. It's now paralyzing the basic functions of the state.
So the struggle has moved from, let's say, the political theater into the dry text of the Constitution itself. They are invoking Section 188 of the 1999 Constitution for removal, And the pro-White faction seems really determined to follow the procedural steps to the letter. Let's break down that legal framework for everyone listening.
Right. Section 188 is basically the rule book for removing a governor. It's supposed to be a strict, high-bar process. First, you need at least one-third of the assembly members to sign the notice of impeachment. They've already satisfied that, with all 26 pro-White members signing on.
So they have the numbers. But it isn't an instant thing.
No, not at all. The governor gets 7 days to respond to the allegations. If that response is deemed unsatisfactory by the assembly, that's when the political game moves to the judiciary, sort of. The assembly then has to request the chief judge to form a 7-person investigation panel, and that panel's job is to investigate whether the allegations actually amount to gross misconduct.
And if the panel finds him guilty, what happens then?
Then the final, ultimate removal requires a 2/3 vote of all members. And since the White faction controls 26 out of 32 seats, they clearly have the supermajority they need to carry out the impeachment. That is, assuming the panel gives them the green light. The system, mechanically, is sound, but the charges driving it. That's where the political and legal lines get really blurry.
Okay, tell us about those charges. You're right, these seem to be a blend of serious constitutional accusations and, well, political grievances.
They absolutely are. The allegations against Fubara include things like extra budgetary spending, withholding legislative funds, and this one is big, defying Supreme Court rulings on financial autonomy. That last one is weighty. It means you're crippling the legislature's ability to act independently by cutting off their funds. But these serious charges are listed right alongside the deeply partisan allegation about the demolition of the assembly complex.
And that demolition allegation, that connects directly to the violence that really kicked this whole thing off in the first place, doesn't it? The conflict wasn't just about handshake deals, it escalated into actual physical violence. And now those violent beginnings are baked right into the legal justification for removal.
That's the key linkage. The crisis ignited spectacularly on October 29, 2023. There was a bombing of the assembly complex, which conveniently happened on the eve of the first impeachment attempt. Fubara denied orchestrating it, of course, but the former head of service, a Dr. George Nweke, specifically accused the governor of being behind the attack, to physically prevent his own removal. It's just shocking how quickly this went from a political disagreement to literal explosives.
And that instability, that chaos, led directly to that critical political realignment in December 2023, the mass defection.
That defection was a complete game changer. 27 pro-White lawmakers just abandoned the PDP for the APC. And this wasn't just typical party switching. This mass move created a legislative supermajority that was loyal entirely to the godfather, White, all while the executive tower remained, at least nominally, with Fubara. The system was now structurally designed for conflict.
A governor trying to assert power against a parliament that's basically dedicated to dismantling him.
Exactly.
That setup. I mean, that is the definition of political paralysis. So if the situation was so volatile, the federal government had to step in at some point. President Bola Tinubu, he tried to mediate this repeatedly. But our sources show his efforts, especially that December 2023 peace deal, it collapsed within weeks. The power struggle was just too entrenched for polite agreements.
The failure of that peace deal is very telling. It revealed that White's determination to control his successor was greater than the respect that, should be owed to the office of the president as a mediator. And this set the stage for the drastic federal overreach we saw next.
Which was the declaration of a state of emergency?
Yes. On March 18th, 2025, Tinubu declared a state of emergency. He cited pipeline bombings and a general breakdown of order. And he didn't just intervene. He suspended the governor, the deputy, and all 27 assembly members for 6 months, and then appointed a retired vice admiral, Ibok Ekwe Ibes, as the administrator. This was an unprecedented action.
But if President Tinubu declared a state of emergency, which is pretty much the ultimate federal intervention, why did it fail to bring lasting peace? I mean, was the structural power of White greater than the constitutional power of the president?
And that's the core question this whole crisis poses to Nigerian federalism. The emergency rule, it acted as a temporary reset button, but it didn't solve the underlying problem, which was allegiance. The sources suggest the problem isn't the political process itself, it's the governance model. So the emergency ended in September 2025, the parties were reinstated, and another secret peace deal was brokered. But that deal also fell apart very quickly, setting the stage for the current crisis after Wyke publicly accused Fubara of violating it on December 31st.
So White's power just continues to disrupt the state, even while he's holding a powerful federal post. It brings us right back to analyzing this godfatherism factor.
Exactly. When Wyke criticized Fubara, look at what he said. He didn't cite incompetence or constitutional violations. He criticized Fubara's inability to maintain a working relationship with local government chairmen, members of the State House of Assembly, and other critical stakeholders. This frames governance not as something based on the Constitution or public policy, but on maintaining Wyke's own pre-existing patronage networks.
That statement is just so critical because it confirms that the whole purpose of an election, which is to shift power, is rendered moot. The new governor is just expected to continue paying political tribute to the old guard.
This is the inheritance mentality.
Yeah.
It really is. The core challenge for you listening is realizing that Nigerian democracy can't function effectively when political succession is treated as inheritance. The godfather leverages loyalty, not constitutional authority. And when that godfather holds a powerful federal office, like FCT minister, the dynamic distorts everything. Federal influence is being used as a personal weapon to settle a local vendetta. The state of emergency here, it sets a terrifying benchmark that the federal government can completely dissolve state governance based not on massive instability, but on internal political squabbling fueled by a single powerful figure.
And the party dimension in all this has just reached the level of political farce. So Fubara defected to the APC in December 2025, right, hoping for some shelter. But now the APC contains two rival factions: Wyke's legislative faction and Fubara's executive faction.
So now you have this incredible irony of the governor being impeached by a legislature dominated by his own party. This kind of political arrangement, it just defies logic. It really underscores that party affiliation in this context is completely meaningless compared to personal loyalty to the political patron.
The internal strife is so bad that even the APC national secretary has publicly called on Wyke to resign. He's arguing Wyke is using his ministerial position to interfere in the internal affairs of the ruling party. It's pure chaos.
And this chaos, it's been legitimized by what you could call the defection game legitimacy. That December 2023 mass defection of 27 lawmakers, it originally violated constitutional provisions against party switching without a division or merger in the party structure. I mean, on its face, it was unconstitutional.
Yet the courts validated it.
Yes, the courts first in July 2024, and then confirmed by the Supreme Court in February 2025, they validated the pro-Wyke lawmakers. And by cementing defection as a legitimate political strategy, the judiciary has maybe inadvertently undermined party discipline and ideological coherence. It just empowers political patrons who command personal allegiance over any sort of party ideology.
So the system is caught in this paradox then. The court validates the defection, which seems unconstitutional, but then it turns around and cites constitutional rules, like financial autonomy, and the impeachment charges. It's like they're using the legal system to both uphold and undermine the law at the same time.
That is precisely the analytical insight our sources provide. The courts are actively arbitrating power, not just upholding constitutional principles. They've dissolved elected local governments in earlier phases of this crisis, yet they've validated the unconstitutional defections. It suggests the legal system is playing referee in political fight rather than acting as a firm, neutral pillar of constitutional law.
Let's connect this to the bigger picture then, the overall democratic damage.
Well, if you look at the symptoms, they're severe. Governance has been paralyzed. We saw that with the 2024 budget getting nullified by the courts. Legitimacy is completely contested. We had two parallel assemblies existing at various points, which left the state in limbo. And maybe most worrying of all, the federal overreach, that suspension under Section 305, it set a very worrying precedent for how federal power can be used to resolve local political disputes that are just spurred by personal rivalries. This is a systemic failure.
Okay, let's wrap this up. The Rivers State crisis is clearly much more than a personal spat between two powerful men. It is a systemic failure to manage political succession and regulate party discipline, with this impeachment attempt representing the ultimate weaponization of constitutional tools by a patron who is seeking revenge. And the analysis we've seen, it outlines 4 necessary systemic reforms to stabilize Nigerian democracy. They require constitutional clarity on defection rules, ensuring true legislative independence so lawmakers aren't just, instruments of godfathers, and federal neutrality from the president, resisting those secret, easily broken deals, and most crucially, judicial consistency.
And the outcome of this deep dive leads us to a final provocative thought. The sources conclude that the nation is watching to see whether its established institutions, the Constitution, the courts, the federal system, can contain this monster of godfatherism, or whether they'll simply be consumed by it. If an influential federal minister can leverage his position to incite constitutional collapse in a state, even after the president has intervened and peace deals have failed, what is the true scope of democratic accountability versus raw political control in Nigeria? This struggle, our sources claim, will define Nigerian democracy for years to come. And that's the profound implication you should be mulling over.